Eba na eti say driver no wada. Nti driver no free ne kwan mu. Nti 207 no ayeti say obekwa akọ fa ngura kwan. Ona bus no amwasia. Nti tama isi no ho so be hu si nipa do so pa because bin mu da say window na no sa. Nka ye do sa ebetumi ayi bebre nso ye do so.
If it in echo, any personal commercial vehicle belong to association.
It will be challenging for commercial vehicles without Transport Association membership to operate from this day onwards. This is so we can hold transport operators more responsible. We are in discussion with authorities. The National Road Safety Authority will have 100 more individuals being recruited as road safety inspectors. We hope to achieve this by the last day of April this year.
From now to ending of maybe April, you begin the road inspectors.
We've all heard of the horrific accident that took place in the early hours of this morning at Amoma Nkwanta in the Kintampo South District of the Bono region, claiming over 70 lives. My sympathies and condolences go to all the families and loved ones of the deceased. May the Almighty grant their souls peaceful rest. Last year, I set up an interministerial committee composed of the Minister for the Interior, the Minister for Roads and Highways, and the Minister for Transport to examine and propose measures to deal with the increased rate of road accidents in the country. The committee has concluded its work and has made recommendations for the consideration of the Police Council. As the police is the institution charged with the regulation of traffic on our roads, it is my hope that the recommendations will be speedily acted upon and outlawed as soon as possible. As we can all see, the issue is urgent.
I think there are a number of factors. Certainly, there's a lot more movement at weekends for funerals and so on. People leave home very early, especially if they are doing day return.
Yeah.
They leave home very early. Sometimes they have not eaten, which means that their sugar level is low. They are making bad decisions on the road. And as a teacher, I've been taking interest in checking which of the drivers has a good sense of mathematics. Because sometimes in overtaking, you can tell it is poor calculation.
Yeah.
So we may not think of these things offhand, but in truth, some of the poor decisions are based on a poor sense of calculation as to whether I can overtake this vehicle and be safe.
You're welcome back. This NewsFile is your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on NewsFile, we put Ghana first. And please watch out and take the precautionary measures that have been given as far as COVID-19 is concerned. But is there COVID-19 on our roads? If you check the road crash statistics, for a consistent period of time, over 2,000 people have been killed on our roads every year. And just first 2 months of this year, and 393 have died as a result of the road crashes. What is being done about this situation? Let's get to meet my guest for this second segment, Engineer David Osafo Adonting, Director, Planning and Programs, National Road Safety Authority, Engineer Dr. Williams Aka, Senior Research Scientist, Building and Road Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, Cecil Eko Gabra, Transport Consultant and founder, Top Tech Transport and Logistics, and Abraham S. Zato, Deputy Director, Research, Business Development and Innovation at the DVLA. Thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Great. So, with the statistics that we have, what do you say, beginning with you, Abraham, is this new to you?
Well, Samson, let me say a very good morning again to our cherished viewers and listeners out there. I think this is one of the, as you rightly put it, the programs and platforms from which you get authentic news and information out there to keep the citizenry well informed. Indeed, to us, road traffic crashes and casualties, as we will put it, are not new to us. Indeed, we've been collaborating with our stakeholders and other state institutions to ensure that the countries, people who have the right to move on the road environment, within the road environment, do so under optimal conditions of safety. Unfortunately, however, if you look at how the factors from the road side, from the human side, from the vehicle side interact with each other, and unfortunately we are unable to control the mix where the human factors, the road factors and the vehicle factors result into these crashes. And of course, as we've always said, that a single death on our roads is one death too many for us to handle. I think what is important, and we've made this very clear anytime we have the opportunity, is to reassure the citizenry of the role state institutions like us, DVLA and other partners have to play in ensuring that they are safe on the road, but to also remind them of the responsibilities that they have in ensuring that they keep to the rules and regulations on the road. If you look at some of the lessons, of course, we have to learn from the Ebola crisis, from COVID-19 crisis, etc. You would naturally see a certain movement towards ensuring that there's the personal responsibility side of stuff, there's the state responsibility side of stuff, and there's the collective action side of stuff. For us at DVLA, of course, naturally you would see we have a certain two-leg approach to the things we do. You have the driver's side and you have the vehicle side. Over the years and over the decades, you would notice generally that we train the drivers, we license the drivers, we also ensure that the vehicles that you drive on are registered and also ensure that they are appropriately certified and examined for roadworthy certifications.
So I return to you where you have been faulted, including questions of corruption in the licensing regime that may have led to some of these lead to some of those road crashes. But Dr. William Aka, when you look at the statistics, as far back as 2004, I see that we had over 2,000 people dying in that year. 2005, we had near 2,000 dying. 2006, near 2,000. 2007, we have over 2,000 dying. 2008, almost 2,000 dying. 2009, over 2,000 died. Look, that's how the statistic looks. And from 2011, you see 2,000 plus, 2,000 plus, and then very recent years, from 2016 to 2019, 2,000 plus, 2,000 plus. That's how the statistics look. We know the problems. So why this, some of you say, needless carnage?
Okay, thank you, Samson. I would want to say a very good morning to all your viewers and listeners. Yes, we at the Building and Road Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research have been at the forefront of road traffic crash data collection. We've maintained data from 1991 up to, we have data up to 2018. We are in the process of collecting traffic data for 2019.
All right.
As you rightly said, the trend for road traffic fatalities has been on the increase from 1991 to 2018. However, the trend has decreased from since 2001. The trend of increase has, however, slowed down since 2001. It is not surprising for this high number of fatalities to us because you don't expect reduction in accidents to happen in a vacuum. You need to make investments in all what you do in the facilities, in terms of the vehicles. You need to have responsible road users, and then you need also to institutionalize the institutions. You need to make them stronger. The institutions which are supposed to make sure that road traffic safety is kept to the minimum. You need to strengthen them. As we are looking at it now, the roads are still not safe. The vehicles, there are issues with them. The road user responsibility is not up to the point we are. And then the institutions which are also supposed to coordinate, manage our roads are not up there. So we need all these forces to come together to make sure that indeed we will be, when we do this, then indeed we will be able to reduce this road traffic fatality.
Typical researcher's presentation, but Cecil, there's a disturbing angle also. I don't know if that is new to you as well, where we have the motorcycles that have also, shown to be killing a lot of people. We have as many as 193 people killed by motorcycle accidents, and 703 of the people who use the motorcycles having suffered injuries in 2019. So it's not just about the vehicles, but even motorcycles are killing us.
That is really true, and good morning to your cherished listeners as well as viewers. I will start to say straight away that for road safety, for me, in fact, I've been a practitioner for the past 24 years, consulting not only for Ghana, but for the rest of Africa, including the World Bank. Now, this issue of road accidents doesn't need big English now. We now have to get to the field to sort it out, right? It's an issue of both education and enforcement. If we sit in the office and would do all the calculations and speak big English, honestly, that's not going to solve it now. Right. Now, back to your issue, right? I always say generally, if you talk about road crashes, which is on the increase in Ghana, it is not coming from the vehicle, it is not coming from the road, it is the driver's fault. Right. Now, on the motor issue, if we have allowed ourselves for the laws not to work in this country, because if you look at the regulations, it tells you straight away, maybe Mr. Adonti will tell you much that on that motors are not supposed to be used as commercial, for commercial purposes. But it all started from, I think, 2015, 2016, where our former president even went to Tamale to inaugurate the tricycle to say, hey, let's use it for commercial purposes. If such law, this big law is broken, then honestly speaking, coming down to the regions, to Accra and so on, right, to continue right in front of the police headquarters. There's even a station, there's an Okada station there, which I look at it always and ask myself that, look, do laws really work? I speak to Dr. Abisig of Kolibo. He tells me, and I have pictures on my phone, every day they have more than 20, 30 cases to handle on Okada issues. So the statistics on deaths on our roads will continue to increase as far as laws will not work in this country. So let us accept it. It is not time for us to do all the book work. I do believe that it's a serious enforcement issue, right? That if we step on the road with the police, and now I'm even advocating that, look, we use the military guys to solve our issues when we had very serious armed robbery cases. Let us all get to it. And I believe strongly within a period of 1 year, if it is tackled very well, the accidents will be reduced, and we may be comparing ourselves to maybe Sweden, Denmark, and so on, who have those minimum figures in road crashes.
Right. Mr. Donting, so we know that one of the major causes of road accidents in Ghana is poor driving skills, disregard for traffic regulation by most drivers, and then we're told 10% of road accidents in Ghana are caused by drink driving. Overspeeding constitutes 50% of road accidents. Where is the Road Safety Authority?
All right. Thank you very much. And let me also say good, we are saying the morning to our cherished listeners and then viewers. At the same time, let me also take advantage of this opportunity to express the condolences of the National Road Safety Authority to families who lost their dear ones on the recent crash at Dawa number 2. In fact, we always say Kintampo. Kintampo is getting a bad name, you know, but it's between Kintampo and Tamale.
31 of them.
Yes, a place called
We're told so far only 6 have been identified. Is it?
Yes. So that is another big issue. Very unfortunate, especially when about 24 of them got bent, you know, completely beyond recognition. And I think it's a very serious problem. Before I come to your issue, let me make it very clear that indeed, Ghana, we have a problem, and it's a global problem. I don't think that it's only Ghana that is suffering this kind of problems. We recently met in Stockholm under the United Nations organized a ministerial committee conference, and you could see that every country is complaining. Globally, it was about 1.2 million deaths annually. Now it's hit 1.35 million annually, which means that it is increasing everywhere. Now, United Nations gave, encouraged governments.
The bigger percentage of that is in Africa?
Exactly. The United Nations gave the year 2020 that by the end of 2020, this year, all member countries should have halved fatalities by 50%, half that way. And no country in the world is able to do that, which means that we are all facing a challenge. It's a task that requires a lot of concerted efforts from everybody. So we are working or discussing a very complex issue that confronts all of us as a nation. It's very complex.
So the question is, what have you done over the period?
Very good. Now, looking at the complexity of the problem, he had just said that we are seeing a human being, the road infrastructure, and then vehicle interacting. When there is deficiency in that particular interaction, then expect something of this nature to come. Now, we have looked at that interaction and realized that what is huge in terms of contributing to the crashes is the human aspect. And so we're talking about particularly the people who sit behind the steering wheel, taking us from our origins to our destinations. And so we say the drivers. So we are always pointing hands at drivers. And indeed, if you look at the human aspect of it, then it is the drivers that contribute that lot. So the question is, who is this particular driver that comes behind the steering wheel? We're looking at a very competent person. The road environment is not a playground. It is a place that requires knowledge and skill to be able to play within the gallery of the law and come out, you know, without any blemish. And so we have, in the past number of years, been working on the drivers in particular, the human aspect, dealing with them, engaging them one-on-one at all times. In fact, I go to the office from morning to evening, from January to February to December, all thinking about how I can get this driver a bit more knowledgeable, skillful to be able to drive within the law. Now, Ghana is by far one of the countries in Africa that has made a lot of strides in terms of structures and systems to protect human life on the road. We have a whole strategy. We have action plans. We have institutions that have mandates to operate within the law. We have road traffic regulations and so on. What is left is how we can translate all these structures onto the ground to operate.
In the meantime, what you have done and the efforts that you talk about, what have they translated into?
Exactly. Now, if you look at the statistics as you read, over 15 years to 16 years, it's all been hovering around the 2000. The situation would have been worse, looking at the systems on the ground and the way we behave on our roads. So what it means that
what it shows me is that it's not improving. You say it would have been worse.
We have stabilized it. In fact, looking at 2,000 per year annually over a couple of 15 years or so, it's been stabilized. I can tell you that without the interventions from the National Road Safety Authority in particular, together with the DVLAs, the police, and all of us, the situation would have been worse. And that one I can assure you.
Do we need a certain COVID-19 approach? Because more people are dying on the road.
Yes.
Needlessly, really.
Yes. So what we are saying is that it is time for us now to recognize the fact that it is not an intervention by the National Road Safety Authority alone. Indeed, we provide the leadership. But we put this into two contexts. One is the attitudes of our road users. And you and I know. In fact, sometimes I want to challenge people who sit with me around this table to say that, how many times have you hit the road on the motorway and driven within 100 kilometers per hour? You're always 120, 150. People are riding 180 kilometers per hour and even beyond. Sometimes they feel they want to fly. But if you look at the law, it is 90 kilometers per hour maximum on the highways. It is only the motorway that provides for 100 kilometers per hour maximum. But go and see what is happening. So I think somebody said around the table that the responsibility that an individual would take is completely missing. So having safety on our roads, first is the responsibility, individual responsibility, which all of us are not, you know. And then it comes to institutions. And I'm sure he mentioned it. Institutions are required by mandates and law to provide some efforts in order that we have that concerted effort we are talking about. The DVL in particular. He said driver and vehicle. The transport operators. You go to Ghana Highway Authority. You go to Department of Urban Roads, Feeder Roads, and then you come to National Ambulance Service. All of us are working within a certain framework. That should operate, that should work. But we have identified that there is some level of laxity in terms of responsibility as regards institutions that should ensure that there is safety. And that is where we have the problem. So we are convinced in terms of education and sensitization. In fact, the last study we had, we have so far reached about 80% in terms of our targets for education and publicity.
I'll return to you, so we revisit something that the government, laid out in 2018, which we thought that you were all pursuing, which would have brought us a lot more improvement, but it does appear that that plan was abandoned. Now, Abraham, so we mentioned, licensing, and that's what you are responsible for. We are told that rickety vehicles with roadworthy certificate, fake roadworthy certificates, unqualified drivers, some of them, they are buying the driver's license without taking the test. Let's forget about the MTTD officers that are always accused of bribes for now, and ask you, what have you done in this direction? People are behind the steering wheel and they've never learned how to really drive. They've not gotten the certification properly. How does that happen?
Okay, Samson, thank you very much. I think this is where, as you said, we begin to drill down to the bone and get to understand what the situation, the picture out there really looks like. And it's important to get a history behind some of the interventions that are currently, being implemented out there. In the case of DVLA, let's take the driver's side, for instance. We are in a situation where, for example, a lot of people driving the vehicles in our country, especially in the commercial space, do not have formal education. So what has the DVLA done? One of the things we are about to roll out right now is that we have translated our training and examination module into 7 or 6 local languages, so that the driver is not exempt from saying, okay, I wasn't participating in the driver training modules because it's traditionally rolled out in English language, but I speak Twi, I speak Ga, I speak Hausa, Dagbani, etc. Now that is no more. And we have had a situation where, together with the road transport authorities, transport operators, etc., now we go out there with our mobile services to the stations, right there at the stations. Some of them who have licenses that are questionable, and stuff like, try to have programs that we can bring them within the formal official scope of getting training and certified by the authority to get the licenses. I think that as a nation, we have to get to the national consciousness where we think and brand road traffic crashes or road safety as a matter of national interest. And we've seen that at play from both policy side and political leadership. And then when it comes to bureaucracy, where we, those in public services and civil service, must act in areas that are of interest to public safety, we must not renege in that responsibility. For example, the issue of people getting licenses that are not from DVLA. This is an issue that, as a country, we must all condemn. We will not say that all licenses are issued by the authority. And that is why we are putting systems in place so that even we, those who work within the DVLA, cannot get up and jump a particular step for a loved one or a friend or a family member, etc. Because we are defining corruption as anything you do for a family, a friend, or a financier that is not, within the public space, etc. But that is not what we are looking at here. What we are looking at is preventing actions that could lead to the death of someone, your loved one or a relative, etc. out there. And it has to take a systems-based approach, not just reacting when something happens out there and stuff like that. And that is what DVLA has been pursuing. Okay. Another step you will see in that is when we are putting together training programs for motorcycle riders. Currently, ask how many people out there, especially the motorcycle riders, have formal training in terms of driver training and education before they are licensed. And so the authority has provided leadership in that direction. If you come to our headquarters, our regional and district stations all across the country, now we go out there, do community outreaches, get motorcycle riders back into the classroom, provide the necessary professional training that they need before we issue them licenses, and ensure that they follow the rules of the road, rules of engagement, rules of ensuring that, for example, they never ride without wearing a crash helmet, reflective clothing, etc. And they do not engage in the commercial activity of providing Okada services when the motorcycle wasn't registered for stuff.
You may be
like
telling them, but to say you ensure that they do this, I think that's a big thing to say.
So, Samson, that's the next step of the natural action to get it enforced. Okay. So there are two sides of the coin, that you provide systems that will promote voluntary compliance. Okay. And then to ensure that those who will not voluntarily comply, you ensure through systems-based approaches with other state actors like the police and etc. to ensure there's force provided to provide compliance. But you see, what we are doing, Samson, is also a very strong form of enforcement. If you come to the vehicle side, that we are ensuring that you no longer have to go through roadworthiness, on the basis of the physical eye. Someone walks around your vehicle, kicks the tire, and says that, oh, I think this vehicle is good to go, the tire is good to go. No. That is why we are consistently and on a vigorous approach campaigning with the private sector to spread out establishment of these private stations across the country, so that
that's the examination station.
Okay. So that it is a computerized system. You walk in there, you leave your car, let the system diagnose what the problem is, and if the vehicle passes, and then you are then given issued the roadworthy certificate.
Just beyond that, he mentioned, Abraham mentioned something about it brought to me a question: who actually are behind the wheels in this country? Now, part of the statistics for the 222 people who were killed in January, we're told that commercial drivers were responsible for 174 74 persons, and then you had private drivers responsible for 80 deaths. In the same mix, the commercial vehicles were less than the private vehicles that were involved in the accidents. What does that say about who should be given a license to drive a vehicle?
Thank you so much. Right. When my brother was talking, I was expecting him to talk about at least the driving schools. I mean, the role of the driving schools, okay, which have been their past president before. Right. We have played a very major role in training of both commercial drivers and beginners. Right. And they should give us a big plus for providing quality driving than what he's talking about. I mean,
must the rules change about who should be licensed?
The rules must...
Basic education.
Yes, the rules must not change, but I'm talking about the content of education, because DVLA cannot be a player, at the same time a referee, because if you're training the person and then you are giving him a license, that is not the right thing to do. But I believe strongly that with the statistics that you've just mentioned, it is quite frightening, because whether we like it or not, a commercial driver will carry many more passengers than the individual.
All right.
But you look at recent accidents, and then a driver has been on the wheel and sleeping, according to what we just listened to. That is quite more alarming. And the concentration this time, I believe, must be on the commercial driver. I mean, the whole system of buses that I look at in this country, I see is wrong, because anybody gets up and buys a bus, whether it's a mini bus, a big bus, and say, look, I'm going to load passengers, right? So if you look at what I'm talking now, I think our eyes, our stakeholders must be on the commercial drivers than the individual drivers.
So it's not exactly about the level of education as in formal education, because for the 2 months, January and February, the commercial vehicles were 1,430 that were involved in accidents, but the private vehicles were 1,616 that were involved in the accidents.
So if you look at this situation, how many people died? Okay.
You had 80 who died for the private vehicles, and then you had 174 for the commercial vehicles.
Okay, so I'm saying for a fact that, I mean, for an individual, my brother David just mentioned what is going on speed, like on the motorway, where people have their V8s and so on. Sundays is racing time, motorcycling and so on. Let's leave those people out. I call those people the elite, and as such, they don't care about whatever happens. But my main concentration is the general public going into buses, okay? I mean, that is really scary than whatever we're talking about, than individuals dying. I don't know the statistics, whether we added the recent people who died to it. And that must be, if that is added, I mean, this whole year, the number will go up.
That's 31 of them.
Yes, that will go up. Right. My beef is rather even going on those commercial drivers driving at night, because at night, I mean, the driving that we talk about is very different. Colors, red, for instance, at night becomes pink for some people, and so on. The issue on road markings, which when you raise, I would really talk about in this aspect, is a very serious thing, and so many other factors in night driving. For the commercial drivers, okay, is my biggest issue, that if we are able to concentrate on issues affecting such people, I think we'll reduce it than the private ones that we are interested in something.
Okay. Now, William, you mentioned the nature of the roads as part of the problem. We have also been told about non-existent road markings and signs. How much of the nature of the road, how much of that is contributes to the numbers that we see as in the fatalities, and what do you know is being done about that?
Okay, thank you, Samson. You know, when you started the program, you played a video which showed that 70 people were killed in traffic. All what we are talking about has been concentrated on bus occupants.
Right.
However, you look at the statistics, and the bus occupant is not the road user with the highest share of fatality. It is the pedestrian. Consistently over the years, pedestrian has constituted between 33.7%, which was recorded just in 2018, and sometimes 45% of all road traffic fatalities. So they are the road users with the highest share of
pedestrians
fatality.
who are knocked down by
Yes.
the roadside.
Yes. One is knocked down here, one is knocked down at the other side. Yeah. But mostly our attention is on the bus occupant because 30 people die at a go and it becomes topical. Mostly when we design our roads, we don't provide for the pedestrian. They are supposed to share the road space with vehicles, and that is very unsafe in this country. We need to provide for the pedestrian. We also need to make sure that when we provide for the pedestrian, the hawkers don't take the space so that they will have that to use. Looking at, we can construct a road. The road is completed. The contractor has moved out of the site, but simple road marking, which could save a lot of lives, is not done. So these are features within the road network which we need to do, provide for the pedestrian, provide simple things which will make the road safe, the road forgiving, so that when even an accident happens, let's say there is a ditch here, you provide guardrails. So as human beings, we make mistakes. And you shouldn't punish the road user unduly for committing simple mistakes. So
how exactly is that also really the case? We know of the recent, demonstrations that were held in Adenta Medina area over the lack of the walkways. They have been provided. Have you driven around the place recently to see what goes on? They just don't use them. On the N1, same complaints. Where you have the walkways, people don't seem to be interested in using them, and they get knocked down. Is it the Road Safety Commission, the authority that's not doing a good job?
I think we are supposed to have responsible road users who are supposed to know what to do at what time. Jaywalking, for instance, under the Road Traffic Act is an offense. Jaywalking.
And jaywalking is what?
Just crossing the road at places where it's not designated for you to walk.
All right.
That is unlawful. So it is the responsibility of the police to ensure that these road laws are obeyed. Yeah. So the police has a responsibility. Changing of the behavior of the road user is a very difficult thing to do.
How much of what we are talking about is the responsibility of the road user or the passenger?
Road user behavior has been found to constitute 80% of all road traffic crashes. So it is very 80%, and it is very, very important. We need to make sure that road users become responsible and then obey.
How do we get that?
Enforcement. That is speed limit, for instance. Drivers are supposed to obey the speed limit. Alcohol, the use of helmets. Let me give you some more statistics on motorcycle, which you mentioned. Motorcycles in 2002 was the 7th most ranked road traffic user in terms of fatalities. By 2009, it has moved to 4th. And in 2018, it is the 2nd most road user group with the highest share of fatality. That is, it constituted 27.7% of all road traffic fatalities in 2018. So we need to make sure that they obey the laws, they use helmets, and enforce the laws to when we do this, we'll be able to reduce the traffic.
Okay, so I'll take a break here, and when we return, I will start with Mr. Adonting, particularly about what we got to know was a strategy, a plan to help improve the situation which appeared to have been abandoned since 2018 when the president signed onto it. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is NewsFile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And this time we are talking about COVID-19 on our roads. Now, Mr. Donting, I was asking, in 2018, the president in April approved a plan to deal with road accidents, because the president, it had been said that having, you know, acknowledged the upsurge in road accidents, he has set up a three-man committee. It's not 3-man because it was the ministries of Interior, Transport and Roads. And they devised a plan. He reviewed it, he approved it, and among others, they were to resource the National Road Safety Commission to scale up public education and sensitization of road safety with an additional 6.5 million Ghana cedis from the road fund. There was to be enforcement of road traffic laws by the police through spot fines, by automation of the MTTD operations. They were to partner with private towing companies and Nationwide Traffic Management and Enforcement Limited to vigorously enforce regulations. And then an amount of 333 million was to be made available a year to provide for signages, road markings, among other things, for 3 years. What happened?
Yes. I think, first of all, I must say that this exercise, somewhere in 2018, government resourced the National Road Safety Authority with a 6.5 million Ghana cedis. So the money came. And so we had to use the money to scale up our education, sensitization activities. In fact, at a point, our frequency in terms of engaging people on radio and TV was so limited that we couldn't reach that far. But receiving this amount, we were able to now go very far, engage a lot of the radios and the TVs. We even had to partner NAPCO for them to give us a number of their personnel, and then we deployed them across the country, and they could also increase the frequency of outreach activities. Now, when it comes...
What's the money factor you mentioned as to reaching to radio? Because you get on our radio stations, you don't pay for it?
In fact, we do pay. Some of them, we played commercials. We partnered with GIBA. You know, GIBA is Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association. Okay. And they did a trick for us. All right. In fact, they had to engage the radios on our behalf. So sometimes you wouldn't find us coming. And so you may think that we are not there. So we are paying the money through GIBA, and GIBA is deploying to their various members. Okay. And so right about 200 of radio stations across the country were engaged, running commercials, and then we also having panel discussions to educate the general public. And then a NAPCO team. In fact, we used to have just less than 100 outreach teams. But now we scaled up to about 400 of the NAPCO personnel, now posted to the National Road Safety Authority. We deployed them across the country, lorry terminals, toll booth areas, going to markets, going to schools, going to churches. And so we could engage a lot of the general public, you know, to...
then we must be doing something wrong, because if there's no...
So that is what I'm coming to.
What you're talking about should result in a dramatic improvement.
And so this is what I am now. But you see, you can't have education alone. We have said that education without enforcement in particular, then you will just be entertaining. And that is exactly what is going on. The other aspect of enforcement that should come to support with a spot fine and automation, it's not there yet. We also saw something on towing services. So the vehicles that become disabled will be towed off and so on. It's also not there. Now we came to the engineering, where we're supposed to have 335 million Ghana cedis to be given to the road agencies for line markings and so on.
Each year, for 3 years.
And tell me where
this will be the third year.
This is the third year. So if you don't get the complementary efforts from these other areas, then your education would only get to a certain extent and cannot go far.
The spot fine is a very effective means.
It is.
What has happened to it?
It is. I think the police will be here next time perhaps too. But I know that they have taken some initiative. We are not there yet.
They have been at this for almost a decade since I heard them speak about it.
This is a challenge to the police, because now we cannot continue to do the kind of manual enforcement they are doing on the streets. Because as to what happens to the police and the individual drivers, I think that is a thing that you can tell me.
Interesting. Maybe, Cecil Gabra, this is where you were suggesting that we could have the military, and some other countries, it's shown to be a most effective way of, you know, road traffic regulation. How exactly do you want it?
Perfectly. I have always been an advocate for that, because I'll give you my own example. I use a Spintex Road every morning Now, because of what I see on certain recalcitrant drivers, I've decided to leave my home at 6 o'clock because it is very annoying. I mean, you see government officials driving 4x4s, V8s, driving in the middle of the road at top speed, lights on, strobe lights, and you ask yourself, where's the enforcement? Now there's a young policeman who I trust very well, but he's limited. The vehicles get to him, and I said, look, Elijah, I don't want you. Why didn't you arrest them? He said, oh, yeah, minister. You see? So if our enforcement agencies will look at this very well, the police, I know, some of them are so scared. I mean, that is, I chat with them, because if you, let me use this word, if you play the fool, they'll transfer you from Accra to Bolga. You leave your family.
Change that.
Thank you. So, but then if you have...
It's a question to you. A soldier will change that?
Yes, the military guy will change it. In fact, I trust my own people, the military police that I work with. I mean, we share ideas. 6 months ago, if you look at this road leading from Christ the King School towards 37, right, in the evening, instead of it being a two-way road, it becomes a dual carriage where everybody forces to get to 37, right? And if you are trying to come from that end towards Christ the King, it is difficult. I told my people, look, let's just go and observe. I didn't say they should take an action. We went there, and as soon as drivers saw the red cap military guys, everybody went back to his lane. Okay, so I'm not saying that the police that we have are useless, but I feel we had a joint exercise some time ago to deal with the armed robbery situation. Look here, if we have the military police or the military together working with Ghana police, I am sure that within 2 months we're not going to have any accident.
This will be very effective?
Well, not scientifically proved, but I know that there have been occasions where similar officers in uniform, I'm talking about the army, have positioned themselves somewhere that is worked perfectly. In fact, I cited an example at Medina Zongo Junction, where these guys, instead of climbing or using the footbridge, they crossed at grade. There was this army officer who stood there, I'm sure for a different purpose, not for traffic, but just the mere sight of the army officer standing, you know, everybody turned out to now use the footbridge. So it may be working, but I know scientifically the researchers will have to tell us.
I see.
But you see, the responsibility of ensuring safety starts from us, individuals, from home.
Right.
In Ghana, we have all the laws. If you look at the road traffic regulations, it deals with speeding, as he said. It deals with pedestrians, as he also raised. It deals with vehicles. It deals with driver training. I think all it requires now is make efforts to enforce the laws as we have provided in the regulations. And this is where I think institutions like DVLA, the police, and all of us who are required to ensure that driver training becomes mandatory. The vehicle testing and inspection becomes broad across the country, and I'm happy DVLA has started some efforts in that direction.
Abraham, we are told that the drivers, commercial drivers who drive in the night, long distances between Accra, Bolga, and elsewhere, they get tired, and mostly that's the reason. They sleep off, and that's what happened in this situation. One of the survivors said the driver was asleep.
So yes, I think we'll still wait for the investigation into the crash, and then we can get to know what the findings will be regarding the interventions that state institutions must take. But I think all that is still geared towards ensuring that the driver stays alert throughout the journey, and overall the citizens have a very good and appreciable level of hazard perception, because I think that is where people in some instances overestimate their own capabilities when they have the opportunity to drive in the road environment. And like
there's Frank Addison Jr. who is suggesting that you could partner with international driving standard agencies to design robust test and training management system. You could decide to scrap the current commercial licensing regime and give 6 to 12 months moratorium for all commercial drivers to enroll and meet the new standards. Then you could suspend driver licenses of those who fail to enroll or do not meet the standards. You could procure and distribute black boxes, electronic devices on all long-standing or long-distance commercial vehicles, which can be monitored by enforcement team control rooms to regulate brakes, speeding, general driving style, among others.
Exactly, and these are projects and activities that the authority is already, undertaking. If you look at some of the regulations in the LI 2180, a provision for speed limiters, for example, and National Road Safety Authority said we've had several stakeholder consultative sessions regarding the introduction of speed limiters. We are also looking at introducing simulators where, for example, these commercial drivers will have to go through some simulated road conditions, and then a qualified instructor or examiner will assess the competency of such a person before they are issued the license. Beyond having the very basic driver's license, the authorities also now looking at introducing the commercial driving permit, where is beyond just driving, a bus from point A to point B, but to ensure that you possess the necessary competence. Because you see, driving commercially is different in the sense that there are other people whose emotions you must make allowances for.
All right.
And so,
sorry, but we are running out of time. If we can have William give us your very final word, what should we be doing? And what's your role as well? You just monitor and report.
Our role, yes, we do research, come up with areas where we think attention should be targeted.
And where should the most attention be?
Pedestrians now, and then motorcyclists.
Okay.
And then on the non-urban highways.
Right. Yes, I don't think. What should we be doing now, immediately?
No, immediately. In fact, from Monday, the Minister of Transport himself will come up with some direction.
But some highlights will be, as my good friend from DVLA is saying, speed limiters. We should also be looking at the transport operators put in place those standard permits and all that. And beyond that, don't let us forget that the road infrastructure has something to give us. And so we should be thinking around.
Thank you all very much. And if you have been driving and texting, you've been driving and using your phone, it's in fact illegal, it's wrong. The law doesn't allow it. Let's all avoid that, because that's also been found to contribute to a lot of the crashes. My guests have been Engineer David Osafo Adonting, Director Planning and Programs, National Road Safety Authority, Engineer Dr. William Akar, Senior Research Scientist, the Building and Road Research Institute of the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Cecil Ekol-Gabra is Transport Consultant and Founder, Top Tech Transport and Logistics. Abraham Zato is Deputy Director, Research, Business Development and Innovation at the DVLA. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini. As always, my outfit is by Latida. Stay safe.